Hi, I am Anna. I come from www.ntvforex.com. The week ahead FOMC Minutes, UK retail sales, public finances, flash PMIs, Cineworld, Persimmon and Walmart earnings analysis. http ntvforex.com News ID 689442 8/14 2023 30:13 p.m. 1 NBSP FOMC Minutes A1908 NBSP. Last month's Fed meeting was notable for what was done outside of it once again, with the U.S. Central Bank NBSP announcing that it would be extending its central bank and U.S. dollar repo and swap lines until the end of March next year, as a precautionary measure to ensure the smooth functioning of financial markets. While monetary policy was left unchanged, it was quite apparent from Fed Chair Powell's comments that the Fed was trying to get ahead of any possible economic deterioration while also acknowledging that current events are likely to remain largely out of their hands, and dependent not only on the overall course of the virus, but also on any further fiscal action from U.S. politicians. Powell's comment that the Fed needed to hope for the best but prepare for the worst could as easily have been aimed at Capitol Hill, and the partisan nonsense going on there, as to the probable stop-start nature of how the virus will affect life in local communities, and the implementation, as well as lifting of lockdown measures in response to future outbreaks. Powell also made clear that the Fed was in this until we well through ETA, which suggests that there probably was some discussion of an extensively easy monetary policy and how long it might last. We'll also get to find out how close the Fed is to a policy of yield curve control, as we look ahead to what would have been the Jackson Hole Symposium, but which will now be held virtually with the theme Navigating the Decade Ahead, Implications for Monetary Policy on August 27 NBSP and 28 2 NBSP UK Public Finances Jewel A2008 NBSP NBSP. The last 3 months have seen the UK government borrow over £100 billion, an exceptional post-war intervention to support an economic shock that will reverberate for years to come. In April we saw a 47.8 bn followed by another a 44.7 bn in May as the UK Treasury paid the wages of over 8 private sector employees. In June that number came in at another a 34.8 bn, while the number of jobs getting government support has risen to over 10 A number of UK companies have since said they would be repaying the help they received from the UK government, which is welcome news and may make it easier for Chancellor of the Exchequer Sunak to look at extending the furlough to the most vulnerable sectors of the economy. At some point the UK government will still have to look at how they intend to pay for all of this, but for now, with 2- and 5-year yields in negative territory and 10-year yields below 0.25%, it isn't something they need to be too concerned about right now. We're still expecting to see a big number in July. However, the total amounts don't appear to be rising as quickly as originally thought. While it won't stop UK borrowing from moving above 100% of GDP, the Chancellor could well afford to be a little more flexible given that the total amounts borrowed haven't been as high as originally thought. 3 NBSP UK retail sales Jewel A2008 NBSP. After the big declines seen at the end of Q1 and beginning of Q2, we've seen a decent rebound in the months of May and June with respect to consumer spending. There has been without doubt weak spots, but we've also seen big improvements in food sales along with DIY, as well as a surge in online activity, even as non-essential shops reopened in the middle of June, followed by hairdressers, pubs, and restaurants at the beginning of July. The rebounds of 12% in May and 13.9% in June are all the more welcome given that, unlike the US, infection rates in July have been fairly stable, which along with some decent weather should see more positive, if a little cautious, retail activity, as we head into August. 4 NBSP US weekly jobless claims A2008 NBSP. Having initially hit their lowest levels since late March a couple of weeks ago, there had been some concern that the rise in virus cases during the second part of July, as well as the cliff edge of the drop-off of the $600 a week enhanced unemployment benefits package, would see a spike in claims in the weeks ahead. The latest claims numbers NBSP came in at 963K, dropping below the 1M level for the first time since before the lockdown in early March. Continuing claims also fell back to 15.48M, again the lowest figure since the first week in April. These falls in the levels of claims are more surprising given that there had been much hand-wringing at the prospect of the loss of this weekly $600 unemployment benefit, and the effect it might have on the U.S. jobs market. Yet here we are, 2 weeks into August, and the weekly claims numbers have continued to fall, as have the continuing claims numbers. Of course, that could still change if U.S. lawmakers continue to procrastinate about a future stimulus package. 5 NBSP UK, France, and Germany flash PMIs AUG A2108A NBSP recent PMI data from the UK, Germany and France has seen a continued recovery in economic activity through June and July as businesses have continued to reopen. This recovery has been most evident in the services sector, which bore the brunt of the initial lockdown declines. In the July numbers, UK services PMI improved sharply to 56.5, from 47.1 in June. With restaurants and bars, along with hair salons continuing to reopen and the Chancellor's Eat Out to Help Out proving very popular, we could well see further improvements in the UK numbers. We've seen similar strong gains in the France and Germany services numbers as well, with France posting a reading of 57.3, and Germany 55.6. Manufacturing has proved to be steadier, having proved to be more resilient, but is still above the waterline in all 3 cases, above the 50 level. The wider question is now that we've still not seen a further relaxation of the rules due to concern over some localized outbreaks, is whether we'll see August activity slip back a touch from their July bounce backs. 6 NBSP Persimmon H120A 1808A NBSP house builders also took a hit because of the lockdown of the UK economy in April. In July, Persimmon provided a snapshot of the effects the lockdown had on its business during Q2. In April, total revenues fell to a 1.19 bn, down from a 1.75 bn in 2019, with completions sharply lower at 4,900. Down from 7,584. On the plus side, average selling prices were modestly higher at a 225k, however higher costs are likely to eat away at overall margins in the months ahead, which could act as a drag on profitability. Much will depend on whether the removal of stamp duty for properties up to a 500k will offset any loss of confidence prospective buyers have about the economic outlook. Recent mortgage approvals data suggests that consumers are becoming much more cautious. There are certainly grounds for optimism if the rise in forward sales that we saw in the wake of retail offices reopening is sustained into the rest of the year. All in all, the outlook looks more promising with respect to demand outside of London, as demand for property further afield helps drive demand in a post-COVID world. 7 NBSP Cineworld H120A 2108A NBSP this month. The decision NBSP by Disney to push their new cinema release of Mulan straight to their new streaming service Disney is yet another body blow to a cinema industry that was already in big trouble from declining footfall and a slowing global economy at the end of last year. Against this backdrop and its U.S. opening plans in disarray due to U.S. states having to lock down their economies for a second time, and the UK reopenings finally taking place at the end of last month, after being delayed on a number of occasions, the decision by Disney could well be the beginning of the end for a lot of local cinemas who rely on big box office releases to stay afloat. EDA's already costing Cineworld almost $50 million a month in spite of furloughing its staff, and the fear is that any further delays in film studios further delaying their latest releases, along with the requirement to wear a face covering, could see the cinema business start to run out of cash very quickly, if consumers show little enthusiasm for returning. In the last week or so, the shares have gone on a run to the upside on potential takeover chatter after a U.S. judge made a ruling that overturned the rules that dictated the release of how films are released in the U.S. Since the 1950s, Hollywood had a monopoly on how films could be produced, exhibited, and distributed, a practice that has now had time called on it. This story appears to have taken on an added twist in that last week's ruling could make the beleaguered cinema chain the subject of a takeover bid from a big Hollywood studio, according to recent speculation in a UK newspaper. While it is true that Cineworld shares have taken a battering over the past 12 months, the main reason for the weakness, coronavirus concerns notwithstanding, is the level of the company's debt, which along with its modernization program has placed an enormous strain on its balance sheet. With footfall at record low levels, and likely to remain subdued, there are significant obstacles to a potential takeover, not least how to accurately predict future cash flow in a post-COVID world. 8 NBSP Walmart A Q2 21A 1808 NBSP A in Q1 Walmart saw e-commerce sales rise by 74% as more people shopped online as a result of the COVID-19 lockdowns. While its sales soared during the pandemic, so did its costs as the company employed an extra 200K people to help clean stores, stack shelves, and get online orders out of the door. This extra $900 million in costs did not stop the company turning over $134.6 billion in Q1, as the company continues to compete with Amazon as the one-stop shop of choice in the U.S. retail sector. Walmart also invested an extra $1.2 billion in its Flipkart venture, increasing its majority stake in the Indian operation in order to ramp up its operations there, which have been struggling due to intense competition with Amazon. The consolidation of Walmart's Indian wholesale business into Flipkart's operations will help cut costs there as it seeks to make inroads there. There has also been some chatter in recent months that Walmart was considering its options over its Asda business, from talk of an IPO to selling the business to a private equity firm. These initial discussions, which were confirmed in February, came just about the same time as the coronavirus pandemic had started to hit the headlines and stock markets were close to the bottom of their sharp sell-offs. These talks were said to have resumed in July. However, an IPO seems much less likely now given the even thinner margins facing the supermarket sector in the UK. 9 NBSP Home Depot Q2 21A 1808A NBSP When Home Depot reported its Q1 earnings in May, its profits were dragged down by the costs of having to cope with the extra costs of safeguarding its staff as a result of the pandemic. Revenue for Q1 saw a rise of 7.1% to $28.26 billion, with same-store sales rising 6.4% as consumers stayed home and spent money on their homes. Net income, on the other hand, fell 10.7% to $2.25 billion as the company doubled overtime payments and weekly bonuses. Another reason for the surge in revenues was a boom in online sales, with the company being seen as an essential retailer during the various lockdowns, which has meant that the company has also had to invest in a lot of part-time workers to make up the extra workload. While costs are expected to continue to rise, the expectation is that the resulting rise in revenues will be able to compensate for that. As such, profits for Q2 are expected to come in much higher than Q1, at $3.44 a share. NBSP 10 NBSP Nvidia Q2 21A 1908A NBSP, another U.S. tech stock that has outperformed the wider market over the past few months. The shares are up over 80% year-to-date, helped by a combination of outperformance in its data processor business, which has seen revenues surge by a similar percentage amount, but also due to the higher demand for home computers as a result of the rise in home working. The recent rise in cryptocurrencies could also help boost demand for its chipsets as well, with Bitcoin back at one-year highs. NVIDIA SA100 GPU is used by the likes of Amazon, Google, and Microsoft in their respective cloud businesses, where demand has been strong, and is likely to remain that way as all companies look to boost their cloud capacity. NBSP, while most people know the company for its high-performance graphics chips, demand here has also been fairly robust. However, there is a concern is that while video games have become more popular, gaming console demand could slow, given they are expensive bits of kit. This could make the share price vulnerable to a pullback if this week's update falls short in any areas. 11. NBSP Deere Amp County Q3 20A 2108A NBSP When Deere reported its Q2 numbers, the U.S. agricultural equipment maker said that it expected global sales to fall by up to 30% to 40% in Q3, despite beating revenue expectations in Q2. While revenues beat expectations, this was mainly because of the varied measures to cut costs, which has included the laying off of hundreds of workers, replacing higher-paid, more experienced workers with younger and lower-skilled employees. Since those Q2 numbers back in May, the U.S. economy has continued to open up, and the shares have risen solidly from their March lows to be trading at one-year highs. Expectations are for profits to come in at $1.21 a share. Subscribe our channel to receive the news as soon as possible. Thank you for watching. If you want to read real-time news, text messages to MT5 Expert Advisors page at https://m.me/mt5.expert.advisors.